Welcome to the RPGBOT.Podcast. I'm Randall James, and I welcome you to our new Archer D&D themed game. With me is Lana!
I'm going to say that that's me this time. So, hi, good evening.
Isn't Lana your cat's name?
Lana is also my cat's name, but no, Lana's in Archer. It was the whole thing I was going to do. Anyway, Tyler Camstrip to whatever.
Hi, everybody. I'm not a cat.
Oh, Patreon folks are going to enjoy that one.
No, I think everybody's going to enjoy that one. That's staying in. And Random Pal, of course, already spoke up earlier. Random Pal is not, in fact, Lana is also not a cat, and he's with us.
Howdy.
All right, Tyler, what are we going to do today?
Well, today we're going to talk about adapting media to a tabletop RPG. So this is kind of a subject that gets discussed a lot in various online discussion forums. You will encounter some exciting piece of popular media and say, hey, how do I do this as a tabletop RPG? And very frequently, like, hey, how do I make this Dungeons and Dragons? And we're going to explore kind of a how-to on how to do those things. And then we're going to look at some fun examples.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And for folks who, like, they've heard of Dungeons and Dragons and they watch, a fantasy film or they read a novel or they play a game, they're like, I want to do that, but I want to do that with my friends instead of alone. The question feels natural, right? Like, how do I take this rule set that I have heard of? Because for a lot of folks, I feel like they don't know other games exist. I think I was definitely in that camp. Like, yeah, there's Dungeons and Dragons and nothing else exists. That's it. That's the end of it. I didn't realize that there were different editions, at one point in my life, like just the D&D, and it's been there for 40 years.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm just thinking, like, if 40 years ago's D&D was still what we were all playing today.
Woof. Oh, God, no. No more lookup tables, please. Yeah, that is pretty common. A lot of people, Dungeons and Dragons is your first RPG. For a lot of people, Dungeons and Dragons is your last RPG too. It may be just the one game you play for your entire life and you never feel the need to branch out. And there's a lot of merit to branching out and playing every other RPG.
There was a brief moment where I thought what you meant is D&D kills them. And so I'm glad you clarified.
No. I have been playing tabletop RPGs for 20 years now, and probably like 99% of that game time has been Dungeons and Dragons of some variety.
And I can promise Tyler Camstrip is still alive.
If there was ever going to be a demi-lich bringing you a podcast, it's RPGBot.
That's the retirement plan, guys. Just turn into a demi-lich and continue the podcast.
Good.
So I want to talk about some examples. Video games are very frequently what I see brought up the most because there's so much overlap between tabletop gamers and video gamers. Like I've got Steam loaded up on the machine that I'm using to record this podcast. Definitely overlap there. It's not quite a circle, but it's a very small Venn diagram. So a lot of times a new video game will come out and people look at the video game and say, hey, there's something about this that really, really catches my attention and I want to bring this to the tabletop somehow. So popular examples, Dark Souls is still a huge point of discussion and a lot of people are looking for ways to adapt it. Darkest Dungeon, every time it gets a major update or whatever, people come back and they're like, hey, I want to make Darkest Dungeon into a D&D game. The Elder Scrolls series, every time there's a new game that comes out or every time Skyrim releases again.
Right in the heart.
Yeah.
So I suppose in the knee.
Lord of the Rings is a classic. There's been various adaptations of the Lord of the Rings setting into D&D. And The Witcher, another popular one. I haven't seen The Wheel of Time discussed, but I'm basically just waiting at this point for people to say, hey, I watched The Wheel of Time. I would like to do that as D&D now. Sometimes you do see some crazier ones out there like Doom, personal favorite of mine, just trying to make Doom fit into D&D. We'll get there someday.
It's interesting that you mentioned like that these systems are things that people want to bring in, and there's a really kind of neat segue here. So you look at all of these things, and I would assume that it is also a very small Venn diagram, again, not a circle, but a very small Venn diagram of people who are playing role-playing games for fun and people who grew up reading a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. And I know that for me personally, one of the things that I always really enjoyed whenever I approached some new fantasy setting was learning the magic system. That was one of the big things that actually drew me to one of my favorite series as a YA reader, Garth Nick's Sabriel Lyriel Abhorsen series. just that way that magic was done, and necromancy in particular, very cool. But what that really hits on, and particularly as you look at all of these things, the vast majority of the things that Tyler talked about a moment ago, they're all functionally the same setting. They're a kind of grim, mid to high magic fantasy trope setting. So the real thing to ask yourself as you're trying to do this is why? What about that setting do you actually want to play? Is it a mechanic? Is it a set of characters that you want to import? Is it the world itself because, something about the world is very cool? And there's no wrong answer here. If I wanted to bring the magic system in from the Sabriel series, then great. And a place to go from there. If you want to bring from Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's truly impressive quantity of world history and lore, which is all really good, then go for it. There's a lot of reasons why you could want to do this.
I think that's a great point to make. There's the world. And so in your open world RPGs, or I should say computer RPGs, that open world environment can be really interesting. And you could think about what adventure would I put in this setting? How would a group of tabletop adventurers interact with the general mythos of what is happening, to include maybe even the adventure being played in the game? And I want to come back to that in a second. You bring up what I'll call the hard magic systems, where there is an understanding of what magic is. And, Lord of the Rings is the farthest away from this, where I'm actually still, it isn't clear to me who has the power to use any magic, when, where, or what, and why. And why couldn't we solve half these problems with your magic, kind sir, instead of tossing tiny people into blizzards? That's my feeling on it. Versus you take that all the way to, something like Elder Scrolls. It's pretty obvious, right? You eat a wheel of cheese and then you cast the magic and we're done. The Witcher, there's rules for it, and I think there's something there. So I say this to say, you could bring in the mechanics and say, I think the mechanics for how we handle fighting, or how we handle magic, how we handle boosting our powers by taking potions and this sort of thing, is interesting. The thing that I think is hardest, and I think is worth maybe poking at, is in film, when you see characters in an adventure having an adventure, and you say to yourself, I want to recreate that adventure as part of a tabletop experience. Again, I'll go back to Lord of the Rings and I'll say, if you have two characters and they want to play as Frodo and Sam climbing Mount Doom to throw the ring in, there's only so many ways I feel like to tell that story, and it feels restricting. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree. There's only so many times you can tell the story of two guys going on a walk. There's this exercise, I think it came out of Amazon, actually, Amazon software development people. So it's the 5 whys. Basically, you ask someone why.
It's Toyota, actually.
Is it Toyota? Thank you.
It is a Toyota thing, yeah.
Yeah, so you ask someone why 5 times. Why do you want to play Frodo and Sam? You say, because I like the idea of two people going on an adventure together and going through hardships. And you say, okay, why do you like that? And you keep going. Every time you ask why, you get finer and finer detail. And by the time you ask the 5th time, you'll have a good sense of exactly what you're looking to replicate from that experience. That central concept of exactly what you're trying to replicate is what you should use to move forward.
Yeah, I think I'm 100% with you. And I'll say even here, the second why to me is actually, why are Sam and Frodo the right characters to bring you that experience?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because you could have other adventures and you could have an experience in that world. Why is the adventure that we've already seen take place the right adventure? But taking a step back, there's a rich amount of things that you could try to accomplish. There were famously a lot of other rings. What's happening with those? What's the history? Some of this is filled in. Some of it's available. You could treat that as the basis for the mythology. But at that point, it's your game. Go nuts. Go have fun.
This is super off topic, but Amazon just announced that their new Lord of the Rings show is going to be called The Rings of Power. So we might get an answer to that question.
Right.
That's fair.
Specifically for something as established as Lord of the Rings, one of the other things that you should really look at, and I know that especially for people who, have only been playing for a little while, or, only have a lot of experience with just the one system, it can be definitely a little bit frightening to be like, okay, well, I am very comfortable with 5th edition. I don't want to go look at something else. But of the things that we've just named, Lord of the Rings in particular has a quite robust role-playing tabletop game system that has several editions, and it's up to date. It's good. And that's a great place to start if you want to try playing a Lord of the Rings story.
Well, and to cut in, so the One Ring is one of those systems. The second edition of it is actually releasing right now. So Kickstarter folks who participated in it have a PDF of the rule set available to them right now. And the books should be arriving any moment. I say that to say you're 100% right. These systems do exist, created for that world.
Yeah. I have previously taught a class that I talked about way back in episode 0 as to why my opinion is worth anything. And one of the things that I did was just go through and look at the Wikipedia article for a list of role-playing game systems. It is several hundred entries. If you want to play something, there is probably a rule set that will get you really close, if not the exact thing that you're looking for. Once you have boiled it down to the why, if the why is, man, I just want to play Cowboys in Space, then great. You've even got your pick. You can do Edge of the Empire if you want to handle shenanigans dice. You can do the Firefly role-playing game system, which exists and is, as far as I know, it's just the one book, but like, it's a decent book. If you want to do futuristic stuff, there's tons of options there. If you want to do, your traditional high fantasy or even delve into Lovecraft mythos, there's so many options. Obviously, a lot of, the things that we're talking about, things like, okay, maybe Dark Souls doesn't have an exact grimdark fantasy, I need to roll around and parry. One of the things that you should be paying attention to is, as you go to pull the why do I want to play this out of something, your second question after you have pulled out what you want to play is, will this be a good thing for 4 people for my table? Because a lot of video games are single player experiences that super do not translate well to multiplayer.
I'm imagining 4 players sitting at the table talking about how their characters are each just rolling circles around the boss.
That would be some interesting hitboxes. Looking at different rule sets to solve the challenge is really important. You do need to ask yourself, is what I'm trying to do better suited to a different RPG? And is using that different RPG more work than adapting something that I'm already familiar with? Because yeah, there really are RPGs out there for everything. I have at least 3 PDF RPGs about playing houseplants, and I'm not kidding.
Why?
What a great question. I haven't finished reading them. I'll get back to you in the future.
No.
The short answer is because someone said, I want to play as a houseplant and wrote it. That's it.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, so you can find RPGs for basically anything. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that any minute concept that you come up with that you want to play, you have to go hunting for some new RPG to learn. There does come a point where it's like, okay, I've got all of these different stories I want to tell. I don't have time to learn 20 different RPGs. So maybe you go with something generic like Savage Worlds or GURPS or something like that, Fate, and then just basically adapt that game to whatever you're playing. A lot of the big things that get a lot of traction, like Elder Scrolls, Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, Dragon Age, those all have official RPG adaptations. They're not always fantastic, unfortunately. Sometimes they are really good. You can steal some really cool ideas from them, even if you do not care about that setting one bit. But if you're going to play those major properties, definitely look at the official RPGs at the very least, and then, see if they fit your taste. If not, then yeah, just adjust something that you already know and love.
So one thing I'll bring up to this is that there is an expense to this, and this is a hobby that some of us are willing to dump infinite sums of money into, and other people are reasonable and financially responsible. I say that to say, I can imagine as a DM taking some of the world building and some of the adventure that you can pull from those resources, or that you can pull generally like from the game or the media itself. But it is comfortable to bring it back and skin it on top of the game that your group is already playing, whether that's D&D, whether that's, one of the Pathfinder editions. I guess I say that to say, like, rolling it back, if the adventure, if the world, if the mythos is the thing that really draws you, I do think it's perfectly fine to say, okay, look, I'm just going to skin this on top of, hey, my D&D world is Middle Earth. The gods are as such, and we're going to have a good time with it, and make like the minimalist mechanical changes that you can make to make that make sense. So one thing, there's probably not like a lot of sorcerers, wizards, and warlocks running around.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, basically, if you can use magic, it's because you are a specifically named wizard and or an angel.
Yeah.
One of the other things, and to carry nicely off of this can cost a lot of money if you go trying hunting down all these systems, you can also just build one. I will also talk about a thing that happened in that class. So one of the exercises that I ran, I would ask the kids to sit down with a limited amount of resources and build a game system. The purpose of this was to actually use it as a communications exercise where I would have them in partners build a game system, write down the rules for it, and then without telling them that I was going to do this, have them stand up, go sit down at someone else's station and try and play the game that was in front of them. And it was basically about a exercise in understanding your biases and your preconceptions and how that prevents you from communicating effectively. However, some groups went really hard with this. And so a pair of my kids, they said, well, okay, we couldn't really figure out what we wanted to do. And we had been just thinking about Texas Hold'em. And so they said, what if instead we make a role-playing game where you take narrative control for a turn by winning a hand of Texas Hold'em?
Oh,
and
go on.
What they did in the class was, it was just like, wow, that's a fascinating concept. And, you know, they only had maybe half an hour to work on that or something. But I came back, this camp happens every year when it's not a pandemic, and we usually get a lot of repeat people. So I ended up as the person in charge of a couple of these kids later, you know, like 4 years later. And I come in to check in on them in one night, and they are playing that game still, that they have now written out a full rule set for, about how they are basically just playing Hold'em, but like the betting is like betting story points. And when you win the hand, you basically get to control the narrative for like a 10-second block. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. The rules were absolutely bare bones, but they were having a good time, which is the only thing you need to do. And it was just breathtaking to see. My point there is, you can just write these. Yeah, it takes some time, but here's a pair of teenagers getting the bones down in half an hour. If you are the one trying to run your game like this, maybe it takes a few sessions of writing, but you can absolutely just make the system you want to see.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea for a system. I feel like I remember the Greetings Adventurers folks, when they used to do random encounters, they played a game that had kind of a similar setup, and it seemed fascinating. Like the idea that you could exactly that. Like, here's the setup, here's the situation that we're in. Now we're going to roll some dice, or we're going to have some conflict. And Hold'em is a wonderful way of resolving that, where like I can literally ante up and say, yes, but are you willing to risk what happens if I win the hand? And then based on that, you had to do improv to basically move the story forward to the next story point, honoring the results of you know, whatever competitive thing you did. Yeah, that sounds like a great time.
Essentially, all you need is a conflict resolution mechanic. Like, you can tell any story with any conflict resolution mechanic. Sometimes having one that suits the style of game is really nice. I could see playing Texas Hold'em or any variety of poker being really cool for like a Wild West RPG.
It was steampunk themed.
Well, there you go. Flawless.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There are a few RPGs now that use a Jenga tower as the conflict resolution mechanic. So you pull a piece whenever you do something that's a challenge, and if the tower falls, you die. It's a very intentional mechanic that you can be like, okay, I need this thing to happen. I'm going to intentionally knock over the tower. And like, depending on how you design your conflict resolution mechanic to fit into your RPG can really affect how you tell that story.
Okay.
But if you're comfortable with D&D or something similar, it's totally fine to just like D20 roll plus modifier against target number. That is perfectly fine as a resolution mechanic.
I want to go meta for a second. I had been staring for most of the night at this line that said steampunk Texas Hold'em, and I had no idea how we were going to get there. So thank you very much for actually resolving that. Awesome. I want to maybe step back to the top. So we talked about how to bring an adventuring world in, and quite honestly, that for a lot of the worlds folks are most interested in, you might be able to go find an RPG already built for that world that you're excited about. But if you are going to try to put it onto a tabletop game that we know and love, and by know and love, I mean everybody at your table actually has access to resources to, you can still bring that world in, but you might have to make mechanical adjustments. And we've talked about what some of those mechanical adjustments might be. But I think taking a step back and looking to like what tools are already in our toolbox and how can we help folks think through the right mechanical adjustments?
That's kind of a difficult adjustment and a difficult challenge, and the answer changes depending on what you're trying to get.
Well, that's not very satisfying.
I know. So 5th edition D&D and Pathfinder 2nd edition both include a lot of variant and optional rules in the core rulebooks. And starting from there is actually a really, really good idea, because the optional rules that they chose to include specifically are to cater to different styles of games. Like, let's say you want to play a samurai-inspired court politics and honor are a big part of the game. 5th edition D&D has a variant rule in it for honor as an ability score, and you just throw that in, make a few other adjustments maybe, and then there you go, you've got something that fits the theme. PF2 and 5th edition both have sanity and horror rules that work great for a horror game. If you want to do more of an emphasis on like Cthulhu mythos, that would work. If you want to do something like Darkest Dungeon, throwing in those sanity rules could work. Now, of course, the official published variants might not exactly do what you want. So take a look at them, maybe take them as they are, maybe just take them as inspiration and make your own adjustments. But starting from just those official published variants does give you a lot of like pre-tested tools in the toolbox to solve these challenges.
Yeah, I'm just imagining taking Darkest Dungeon to D&D 5e. Like, what would I do as a DM? I would come in as a DM. I would have a stack of character sheets and I would shuffle them and then hand them out to the characters and say, "Hey, we're going in."
Hey,
I would play that game.
That sounds suspiciously like something we've talked about.
Yes.
But it'd be cool, right? Because like you go, you have your adventure where it's just like I go in, I get out, I find, I don't know, flags and busts and stuff, and you, kind sir, are going to go sit at the bar and have a drink, and you are going to go enjoy some gentle flagellation until you feel better about things. If you haven't played that game, real weird. Like, they basically have like canonized the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yes. People like Darkest Dungeon for good reason. It's a really fun RPG with some cool mechanics, and you can adapt that to D&D just using those official variants like I suggested. You could throw the sanity rules on there just fine, and then like if you want to simulate the rotating cast of adventurers, shuffling a stack of character sheets that are maybe randomly generated, that works too. Or you can build your own characters and just like, these characters have gone on adventures. One of them failed a sanity roll, so they can't go on the next X adventures. So you have to have a rotating stable of characters. So in a lot of ways, that would feel kind of like a West Marches game, in that you've got a rotating cast every session, but it's not because like real world players are unavailable. It's because your character is off having a crazy time.
The character is literally unavailable.
One of the last things that I want to touch on before we start digging into some of the real nitty gritty of stuff. There is a RPG system that I found recently that is actually explicitly designed for importing other media. It is called .Dungeon. It is preposterously hard to Google because the name of it is literally just a period and then the word dungeon, which Google does not like. You can find there's I think it's The Verge article that we'll link in the show notes. And the thing is, it is functionally just a conflict resolution system, and that's it. And then it's basically on you to import whatever you want. I've gotten to play a couple sessions of this over the last month, and it's a great time. It really heavily relies on your capacity to improvise or spending a lot of time writing your world down ahead of time, because there's a grand total of 3 published, I can't even say modules because they're very short, but the system itself is meant to be augmented reality. The whole premise is that your players are not their characters. Your players are themselves logging into a video game where they play as characters. There is actually a lot of meta stuff that goes into the system. Like, if you are a mage, part of being a mage is that you bring a book to the session, and that is your spell book. And it is on you to highlight passages in the book and prepare 3 of them as you prepare for the day. And when you cast the spell, your game master adjudicates what it does, and then you cross it out and you can never use it again. If you play as the witch class, you get bonuses based on the piercings and tattoos you have. If you
literally,
this is wonderful.
Yes. I loved this the moment I read it. You can go buy the PDF. It's on the creator's itch.io. There's also a small number of copies of the PDF that were just made available free on a website if you can't afford it, because it was like a Kickstarter goal that got met. So that's a thing too. But honestly, like, one of the things that it first calls out is this is explicitly for you to bring in other media. The overarching world is like a D20 shape, and each facet of the D20 is intended to be like a different setting. It basically says just anytime you come across a challenge, you figure out, how am I going to import this? What value is it worth, and what die should I assign to it? I walked 3 people who had never played it before through character creation in 30 minutes. The only part that was hard was having my mage pick his spells. And of course, he went to Name of the Wind. So, literal magic anyway. It really is an amazing thing if you are someone who does have this, like, man, I want to play this story from a 40-year-old book that no one else has ever heard of and no one is possibly going to adapt, and I can't find anything like it. Try out Dungeon. It's really good.
Okay, we will have a link in the show notes. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm imagining somebody pulling out their biology textbooks like, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. DM, what do?
Oh man, that might be worse than adjudicating wish.
I don't know what you wanted. What's supposed to happen? All right, so I think we've each prepared something special for one another and for you, and I think it's time that we get to that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so basically what we're going to do here is we're going to eat our own dog food. We're going to try out our own advice. I see Random giggling and Randall not even responding. It's a software development term. Dog fooding, quote unquote. You eat your own dog food to make sure it's not terrible.
I have this new service that solves this problem that we've been facing, so I built it to solve the problem for ourselves. A great way to see if what you do before you release it to production, does it actually solve your problem?
Yeah, dog fooding. It's a real thing.
I'll have a link in the show notes.
To dog fooding, yes. Also to dog food. Why not?
I'm imagining Google crawling through and saying, this is just the Wikipedia page for dog food. What happened?
So we have each picked a piece of media to adapt to a tabletop RPG. And the fun part is none of us have told the other two what they are. So we're going to do one at a time, I figure. And we'll go through one and then rotate. Any volunteers to go first who aren't me? All right, Randall.
I raised my hand. I want to go first to get it out of the way. This is a good strategy for anybody at home. Like, if you're still going through school, just if you rip the Band-Aid off, like, you set the bar. And if somebody else does great later, you won't look like a complete idiot. I'll be clear. We also didn't set requirements for one another. I'm very excited about this, though. So it came up earlier, and I've actually been thinking about this for a while. I wanted to do Dark Souls or Souls-like game, because there is nothing more frustrating than making it further and further into a game, figuring out the strategy that it takes, surviving by the skin of your teeth to get a little bit further, hoping you're going to find a bonfire.
And then a skeleton kicks you off a cliff.
Yeah. And then when you revive, you take 3 more steps, get hit once, and you are dead and you have lost everything. That is frustrating, right? Like, it's fun. And I remember the first time that I beat Dark Souls 3, it was just one of these, like, it's over. It's over. The kids came in and the kids were like, is it over? It's over. It was relief. I didn't even feel happy.
Daddy, it wasn't free.
Yeah. Actually, I'll tell a little more than I should. So I played Dark Souls while I ran on a treadmill. So I was just suffering in every direction.
Wow, that is.
I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna add a 6th Y to that.
Because I needed to multitask, right?
Yeah,
running takes a long time if you're going to do anything worth doing. But anyway, so Dark Souls was super exciting to me, and I thought that it would be a lot of fun for this assignment that we put together for each other. So I'm going to make the argument we could actually do this with 5e or with Pathfinder 2. And I think they would both have, they both have their merits for how you go. So the actual Dark Souls thing, the picking a level is basically tied to difficulty. So the hardest difficulty, I forget what the difficulty is called, but it's essentially a naked dude with like a shirt wrapped around the waist. And that's it. That's what you get. Go survive Dark Souls like that. Then of course you pick up equipment along the way, but
okay.
The magic users are slightly harder or slightly easier than that, but they're in the harder end of the difficulty. And then when you get up to like the folks fighting they're doing fine. They're doing great.
Okay. So no caster supremacy in this game. I'm hearing that as a central focus.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the opposite. The supremacy is that you actually managed to beat it as a caster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why I couldn't beat Dark Souls 1, because I went straight to the spellcaster.
Yeah. And I'm saying this is, I actually haven't spent a lot of time studying the game. This was my intuition from playing, like trying a couple of different things. I think what I say is correct. If I'm wrong, message me at Jack Amateur on Twitter. Tell me I'm an idiot. We'll talk about it. Okay, so here's what I think we should do. 1, we are going to lower HP to the point where the typical monsters that are being fought in an area can, with a crit, 1-hit kill, and with no critical hit, 2-hit kill.
Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to back us up just a little bit, and we're going to follow our own advice. And I'm going to start with why. What about Dark Souls catches your interest that you want to bring to the tabletop?
I want to have the mechanics of earning experience by killing things. So we're not, and spoiler, we won't do milestone leveling. We will do experience for killing things leveling. Okay. I want to introduce what I'm going to call graph search, where I'm at a node, I'm at a bonfire. I need to do a graph search to find a new bonfire to kind of expand my region of influence before I die.
Got it. Okay. So I'm hearing that there might be a hex crawl mechanic that we could bring in. So you want to kill monsters to advance, and you want there to be danger between points of safety.
Yes. And if the mechanic I literally want is if I die and I die before I recover my experience, I lose that experience. So dying is normal. And compared to, D&D 5e or PF2, we're all going to be very comfortable with dying constantly throughout a session.
Got it. Okay. So that isn't the dying and regaining experience is definitely hard to bring into a game like D&D or Pathfinder, because gaining experience and the constant linear upward progression of power is kind of part of those games. You need to pick like a satisfying level of power where you're comfortable resetting to, which, hey, check our previous episode about one-shots. So you could say like, level 5 is going to be the base level for characters, and you can advance from there. But if you die, you reset to 5 or whatever.
Well, let me make something clear. So in actual Dark Souls, what happens is if you take a level, you have the level. The trick is accumulating enough experience to take the level before you lose that experience by dying twice. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it's been a couple of years. Forgive me.
No, that's okay. I think this is good because this is going to make it make sense for folks at home too, right? So if you can gain enough experience that it would be enough to go to 6, you then need to return to a point of safety, and then you can do a trick to make the next level.
I almost want to turn this into gun game instead of trying to gain levels. Gun game is a concept from Counter-Strike where basically as you kill people, you get money, and then you use that money to buy a better gun so that you can keep killing people. Rather than increasing your level, if we say, great, your character is level 5 forever, all of the monsters that you're going to fight are appropriate challenges to 1-2 shot you at level 5. And then you just, run through all of the different ones possible. And then basically what you do is you go and you collect money as you win, and you use that money to just buy better and better gear. So your character is always just going to be the same level 5 character. And this is the thing, right? So as a Dark Souls character, you don't really gain new capacities. I mean, I guess there is some spell casting in some of the games,
you do, but when you level, you get to pick a stat to increase each time.
But that's just numerical. I'm talking about like you don't gain a new ability. You don't suddenly gain the capacity.
I don't pick up a spell slot. I don't pick up
exactly. And so this is where I think if you say, great, I'm going to do this by just giving you money and then having a shop where you can turn that money in for a +1 sword, a +2 sword, armor. Maybe you have like 1 or 2 carefully chosen magic items that aren't just numerical bonuses, things that are like, I'm going to have a ring of fire resist because that sort of thing does exist in Dark Souls. Last I checked.
Yep, absolutely.
So something like that. And then because really the only answer to how you beat big bosses in Dark Souls is just get good. I'm not going to go out and now I have power word kill and I'm going to go power word kill the boss and laugh.
I'm going to talk through this and then let's come back and let's revisit the feedback that you're giving. If you have to raise individual skills, and so you might say like my intelligence goes up. The reason that you'll raise your intelligence is because a lot of features that you want to take advantage of are not available to you until you hit some minimal position in the stat.
Let's see. So part of this gets into a problem adapting video games to multiplayer tabletop RPGs. So like Skyrim, Dark Souls, etc., the main character is, in many of these games, every class. Like you have every option available to you. So the need for distinct classes like fighter, cleric, wizard, rogue, like those go away because one character is doing all of the things. In that sense, like D&D wouldn't be a perfect adaptation for Dark Souls because the level-based progression and the class-based capabilities don't exactly match up with the Dark Souls. Like my intelligence increased. Now I can cast Fireball. If every character in the party is like, yeah, we're all going to max our intelligence until we can fireball every encounter and then run back to the campfire, like that might not quite work.
It's a bonfire, good sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I hear that, but I want to bring it to D&D 5e or PF2 for that matter. And this is how I suggest we do it. So keep your classes, build a character the same way that you would build, but I want to modify the HP because I do want to make it basically where like, yeah, you're going to get your teeth kicked in every time. I want the leveling system in whichever rule set you pick to stay the same, but I want to have this XP system that like when you kill monsters, you get it. And this towards the point, Random, you were making a moment ago of like, well, what if instead it's a gun game where you earn money, you use money to buy better guns, and you get to keep the guns. If you die twice, you lose the money. What I would say is let's combine that. So you have XP, and this is literally Souls-esque, right? I can use my souls to buy things, but I can also use my souls to, +1 my attributes. Okay. So instead, let's let you level. Instead of the souls, like you increase your attributes to unlock skills, let's just straight, if you pay for a level, you get to unlock the skills associated with that level. If you want to spend your income multi-classes, and you certainly can, but you're not going to hit your peak. And if instead you think it's more valuable to buy a ring of fire protection than it is to take a level at this particular point in the game, you're going to blow a lot of money. And I sure hope you don't get stuck because you don't have the right skills to get past a particular thing they're going after next.
That's one of the other things that this brings up is any system like that, you're going to have a real hard time with multiple players at the party because, if you have somebody who has died a bunch and they're just 2-3 levels behind in an area where things are two-shotting players who are on level, they're just going to get one shot every time. Maybe somebody has fun with that, but that's going to be rough.
So actually, I think this would be super exciting. Like if you have a good group of people who want to cooperate together. Real quick, let's talk about death. If you get a TPK, the whole party is returned to the most recent bonfire that they checked in at. Okay. If one character dies, but not everybody, those players go on, but socially they are encouraged to return to the nearest bonfire to retrieve their dead friend. Now imagine the escort mission of anybody else can die, but we cannot let this one person die. Because if they do, they're literally going to lose 2 levels worth of XP because we were idiots and we forgot to go back and actually take it. I think that would be a lot of fun. Like this whole, like, we have to keep them up no matter what, to the point where, okay, Estus flasks are a huge part of the game. I want to let you use an Estus flask as a bonus action, which will restore most of your HP. And the way the game is leveled, you find these things to add the amount of HP that an Estus flask gives you back. And you also get more Estus flasks over time. I think absolutely cooperate that or copy that. But it then becomes this thing of like, I have been hit this turn. If I get hit again next turn, I will die. So in lieu of doing anything else, like anything that potentially would add additional damage, I have to take my Estus flask or risk dying in the next moment.
I could see you could just make the Estus flask just use your hit dice. That wouldn't even change the mechanics of 5e all that much.
100%. Except where you'd be able to use them. I'm going to argue you have to be able to use them in combat.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only mechanical change, right? Is you have your hit dice.
And then that gives you the Estus flask is limited in capacity and recharges when you hit a bonfire. So like your bonfire is your long rest, which resets your hit dice. So yeah, just bonus action, drink a hit die, or maybe multiple hit die if that's what you want it to be.
I know. I love that. I think that makes perfect sense to me. So yes, and recognize though that when you hit a bonfire, just like in a Souls game, all of the monsters you've been fighting come back.
So that specific part in a D&D game might get to be a pain.
That's a good point. And I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, like it is okay, I just fought those 2 goblins and it took us 20 minutes to get through that combat. And now, because I've used a bonfire, I actually have to go back through it again. I think, so one would just be finding ways to speed up combat. I think one good answer would be to lower the HP of the monsters. So they're brutal. They can deal a ton of damage, but half the party can take actions and take these creatures out. And then you might have to play some games with initiative to just make sure that everybody's getting in on the action. Because the spirit of it would be that you'd be moving through this dungeon pretty quickly.
Right. So everything's a glass cannon, basically.
100%. Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it. I want to bring one more thing into this that I want to honor from Souls. And at that point, I'm going to hand the keys over to then go to one of the other games. I think everybody who's ever played the game understands one of the critical mechanics is rolling.
Rolling.
I want to give another action that can be taken as a bonus action on your turn. Actually, we should talk about this. Is it a bonus? Let's address it.
Bonus action dodge.
Let's talk. I want to give you a roll action, whether it be a bonus action or I have another offer. I want to see what you say to it. And what I want to do with this is impose disadvantage on any attack and impose advantage on any saving throw on the character's behalf if you roll at the end of your turn.
Okay. But then what is the cost of doing that?
So good. We should talk through it. Bonus action, I think, is pretty obvious. And I think I want to table that for a second. The other thing I could imagine doing, which is more in the spirit of how it actually happens in Souls, is half of your movement you can roll, which will consume all of your movement, and you can only move half your movement. And maybe with certain classes, like classes that don't wear heavy armor, I might allow you to move your entire movement, but with a roll.
I immediately find that not punishing enough.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're going to add the benefits of, and also you get advantage on all of your saves, that should just be your action. And even if you compare that to Souls, if you have one guy up front rolling around tanking the boss while other people are DPSing, that's a thing that a multiplayer environment is going to allow. You can't attack while you're rolling.
Okay, I have a counter offer. What if it's bonus action plus everything I said about act movement? So you have to take a bonus action to use half your motion as a roll to get the advantage disadvantage.
That's still pretty light. Like you can build a fighter without using your bonus action once in your entire career.
But now it's competing with your use of Estus Flask. So if you do get hit, are you going to heal or are you going to try to roll away?
But here's the problem is if you keep it at a bonus action, and technically speaking, if you keep either of them at a bonus action, you can do both in a turn. You just don't attack.
That's fair. That's giving up something in the action economy. That is a really good point, though. I want to add one more piece to this. This is actually just occurring to me as we're talking through it live. Do you think it makes sense for monsters to have the ability to attack either between every turn or, I don't know, maybe every other turn, something like this? Well, we're putting Band-Aids and duct tape on top of this thing to make it work.
I think that probably the only way to make it interestingly challenging for a group is to always have them fighting a group of at least equal numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
that's not hard to hit. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're facing big solo monsters, that's what legendary actions are for in 5e. Like it's specifically so that the monsters are attacking after basically every player's turn.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. And so maybe, again, like the duct tape would be, if you do have single monsters that you want them to fight for whatever reason, give them legendary actions. Like we should maybe write up a small fixed set of legendary actions that make sense to just add to creatures of type X, type Y. Yeah, I'll buy in. All right. So I'm going to pose the question. We've laid it out. Would you two folks play this game?
I'd give it a try. I want to see where the like dodge roll mechanic, like that might take some refinement. But I mean, yeah, if you're homebrewing anything, it's always going to take refinement. But yeah, I'd give it a try.
As someone who does not enjoy Souls-likes, I probably would not. That sort of slog is not my jam. And I recently went through Jedi Fallen Order, which is the most Souls-like thing I've ever played, and is probably still only like a 3 on a scale of 1 to Dark Souls. Even that was definitely frustrating at times.
Okay. I feel like that response also feels like a positive vote for what I'm offering you. So I feel good about this, actually.
Exactly.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I will. The thing that I wanted to adapt was not a game. It was, in fact, well, I guess it could be a game, depending. Once again, I think the Venn diagram of people who watch science fiction movies and people who play video games is pretty narrow and close to a circle. But in case you haven't seen Edge of Tomorrow, which is a movie that I adore, and have played Deathloop, which is a very recent, very mechanically similar. Basically, my plan for this is, so the why that I want out of this is...
Well, actually, no, you can stop because you had me at Edge of Tomorrow.
Exactly. I love that movie, and I think it is criminally underrated because of its awful marketing campaign.
I think people figured it out though. Like real quick, just to lay it out. So the premise of Edge of Tomorrow for the folks at home, one, pause this recording, go watch it. We'll have a link in the show notes. You'll be able to get it. The premise of it is Tom Cruise is in hole.
Okay, that's the whole movie.
And we're ready to go. No, so Tom Cruise is, okay, let's start over. Aliens have invaded the Earth. The aliens are kicking our teeth in. We keep making strategies, and every time we make a strategy, they just like react perfectly to the strategy and they take us out. Tom Cruise is the media person embedded in the military who's helping them make recruiting videos like fight for the world, fight for humanity, take down the aliens. It's going to be great. And the leader of the resistance says to Tom Cruise's character, you're going to go in on the front line and you're going to record on the front line when we go have this battle, because seeing you there will let people know that this is serious and it's real. And Tom Cruise is like, nah, I don't do that. I stand back here where I'm not going to get eaten by an alien. Thank you very much. And the punchline is Tom Cruise has to go fight. And early on, something happens to him to where he can, when he dies, he just resets to the morning that your shenanigans started.
And this is not a terrible amount of spoilers because this is literally the first 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. I loved this concept, and I really wanted to take this concept and run.
It's like Groundhog Day meets sci-fi. You get to do the same thing every day. You have the same dependable, until you mess with the tree of things that people are doing is constant. So you just hop in where you want to.
Right. So
didn't we just do Dark Souls?
No, but here's what
I mean, a little bit. Yeah.
Here's what I wanted to pull out of this is where Dark Souls, you are expected to just throw your face at an encounter until you learn it and can beat it as a fight. I want this to be the feel of it that I want is really just the when you mess up and die, you begin the whole loop again. And that you can just port into anything. I mean, you wouldn't actually need to change anything about 5th edition if you wrote your story well. And where I would say with a small caveat of but is I would want a lot of this to rely on skill challenges, because any of the actual stand-up fights in Edge of Tomorrow, you're not supposed to win. There's aliens. There's a billion aliens. You're gonna die. And while the point of the movie was, training, memorizing, getting good so that you can win those battles, that doesn't actually feel to me like doing the fight good. That's completely in your mind. That's completely doing the right training. It's practically a dance at that point. I would say for my players, you're going to have to do these fights a couple times to figure out what sort of skills you can use. And then I would say, okay, great. You've had this fight 3 times. I'm going to give you bonuses for how well you did on each of the increasingly, you got to 1 step, then you got 5 steps, then you got 20 steps. I'm going to give you bonuses for those. And then we're going to do a skill challenge to actually make it past that story beat. And then you go from there.
I'll even say, I can imagine essentially letting your characters off the hook. I brought up this idea of a tree, and I do think you could do something like that in your story where you say, yeah, sure, if you want to do this activity, then fight this thing. The 3rd time you complete it, or the 2nd time, or maybe even the 1st time, depending on how it goes, can we come up with some criteria such that if you try to do this in the same order again, I just let you through.
And that is absolutely part of it. The first time you try and pass the skill challenge, it's difficult. The 2nd time you try and pass the skill challenge, it's less difficult, and so on and so on.
Yeah, okay.
At some point, every single time, you're going to have that, okay, well, I did in fact roll a 2 because, well, I did memorize, all of the steps to this dance. I then got it in my head because I was thinking about that thing 4 points from now, and I dodged left instead of right. I still want there to be some capacity for failure, but have it be substantially mitigated the more times you do it. With that said, if people do actually win a fight, great. You pass that part, and then I'm going to say, okay, for this particular piece, you won the fight. You now know how to win that fight. You're never going to have to skill challenge it. You're never going to have to do anything because you actually mechanically won that fight. Great. Nailed it. And then you just build your story out from there. And like I said, apart from just adding skill challenges, that's literally just writing. Just write how you want this story to go, and you could apply that feel to anything. In fact, I actually started thinking about what I would do to write that story because I don't know if 5th edition has actually imported all of the inevitables, but I don't think they got nearly enough love. And so, boy, wouldn't that be a fun being to be working for?
Yeah. Well, I guess I should say, I don't know what that means.
Good.
Cool. Okay. Maybe we'll play
It'll be a
that
fun
game.
surprise for you. Yeah.
Hooray. One of the things that I feel like the film did really well is resetting the meaning of being in a particular area or being at a particular point in the timeline. So for folks at home who have seen it, Tom Cruise's character wants to find a particular character and does in the heat of battle. And that character basically says, congratulations, you've been granted my trust through time somehow. Just find me and tell me this story again, not now, but like a few hours ago, because it's going to be better for all of us if you just tell me a few hours ago. So that was a huge mission to get to that point. And I feel like RPG wise, like that'd be fantastic. It's like, you get to literally the lowest level of the dungeon and it's flooding and everyone's going to drown. And you found the priestess and the priestess says, 8 hours ago, I was having breakfast. Let's talk then. And then you die. And now everything that you had to go through just to earn that trust, you got the passphrase, you got the keyword. And at the beginning of the next cycle, you can just give it. You can just say like phlebotomy hippopotamus. And she's like, I see you're with me. And now we can continue on without having to go through the whole dungeon. That's an amazing storytelling device, which I'm not gonna lie, it actually feels a little bit like what I was pitching with my Dark Souls game, where you've got to get to the next bonfire, but then you're safe. It's like instead of a checkpoint in space, it's a checkpoint in time.
Okay, so I haven't seen Edge of Tomorrow, so I'm like, I know. I live in a cave.
Goodness, man.
Okay, so I'm being exposed to these concepts piecemeal as we discuss them. I'm teasing out the pieces that we want to take from this.
Tom Cruise is a jerk. How do I internalize that?
Yeah. I do actually see a distinction between Randall, what you want to take from Dark Souls, and Random, what you want to take from Edge of Tomorrow. The difference there is, Randall, you want the danger in getting from point A to B, and you want the sense of progression to like the stop and start of progression and the sense of danger of losing that progression as you move. Random, it sounds like you want the, like, as you move forward in time, move forward along the timeline, in a sense, there's kind of a meta puzzle going on above the game where like, I need to get the green storyline key to unlock the green storyline lock to press that down that line of the metaphorical decision tree. I think that could be a really, really fun game, but that would be really hard to write. Like you would have to be a much better writer than I am. Not that that's a high bar, but you would have to be a much better writer than I am to make that work. But if you could, man, yeah, I think that could be a lot of fun to play. And Random, I think you did a really good job solving the fatigue issue. Basically, like, okay, I've killed this skeleton 5 times now. And then your idea of just turning that into a skill challenge of diminishing difficulty every time you go past that skeleton, I think that solves the fatigue issue. And we might even use that same idea for Randall's Dark Souls thing. Like, oh yes, we have killed the skeleton 5 times now. We can just do a skill challenge. We won't get experience maybe, but we can just do a skill challenge to skip the skeleton.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So first of all, I want to say, RGBOT, you're a fantastic writer.
Not so much a novelist. My writing style is more technical documentation than fiction.
Yeah. Also, sometimes there's typos.
Yeah.
I want what Random is pitching too. Like that would, exactly as you say, like the hardest part of it is the storytelling. If only, yeah, if we had a reason to play a game like that, I feel like that'd be a lot of fun.
We could come up with a reason.
No, I feel like that. Okay.
It's a day that ends with Y. Good enough reason.
Yeah. All right. I think there's only one of us less, unless producer Dan also produced a game for us.
I'm getting a shaking head. Okay. All right. So there's a game that I don't think either of you have played, which I think is a terrible tragedy, and hope you'll play it someday. It's called Massive Chalice. I see a nod from Random and a shaking head from Randall. Okay.
I haven't played it, but I've talked to people who have.
Okay. So Massive Chalice, it's, if I remember correctly, it's made by Double Fine. The basic premise is you, the player, are some sort of semi-omniscient entity, very long-lived, and your job is to manage a kingdom as the world dies around you. So the entirety of the world, imagine you have a disk of world, and all around it is craziness. And the craziness is gradually eating the world. And your job is to stave off the craziness for some duration of time until the massive chalice charges and scares off the craziness and saves the world.
Okay. So it's like Sunday brunch when the keg dies, and we just need to make it until the busboy gets back with the keg, tap it to kind of get all the people to back off of it. Is that the right analogy? Do I have it?
I'm going to say no, but that was beautiful. Okay, so you as the omniscient entity control both the individual characters and also kind of noble houses within the context of the world. And because the timeline of the game takes place over several centuries, characters are born, live, and die during that time. When a fight happens, you control the individual characters, D&D style, turn-based combat, all that. But between those encounters, you have to make sure that the noble houses are all getting along. You have to arrange marriages to continue bloodlines so that you have these noble heroes, because for whatever reason, only the nobility can take class levels, essentially.
Okay, that makes sense. You brought up the idea of combat. So there's an idea of combat in the game. What motivates there to be combat between, why do people fight?
Great question. So monsters walk out of the craziness. If you don't destroy the monsters eat the ground.
Does that then spread the craziness?
Exactly. So
Perfect. Makes sense.
You lose an encounter, one of your territories is absorbed into the craziness, and you no longer have that territory, the resources from it, and the noble house that lives there.
Okay. And you can obviously never recover it in the time of the game. Okay. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So you are continually fighting off the craziness over the timeline of the game, and managing. You can accumulate resources throughout the game, like your characters start at higher levels when they're born. You can unlock new classes I had the wizard noble house and the fighter noble house. They formed a political marriage, and one of the houses is now Eldritch Knights or Blade Singers or whatever. Essentially, what I really like about it is the long timeline where instead of getting attached to one individual character, because your character might live long enough to play 2 or 3 adventures, maybe, and then they're going to die of old age. So you have to manage the noble houses of heroes and basically make them all get along to produce better heroes to fight the increasing craziness.
So one of the things that both of your games really hit on, and especially Massive Chalice, there are things that video games allow you to do that tabletop games have a real struggle with, which is allow you to fail meaningfully and still immediately get back into the action. There's a game design term called flow, where basically humans enjoy challenges the most that are just at the edge of their capabilities. And when you have a game like this that has difficulty levels, you're going to find what suits you, and you're going to enjoy failure because it's so close, man. If I had that one turn different, I would have pushed back and my chalice would be massive. In a multiplayer setting, that breaks down for a number of reasons. A, you are not the only one making decisions. And so you feel like you only 25% control the outcome at a standard table. And that's only within the bounds provided to you by a DM if you are a DM and 4 players. I appreciate that you have, you're only going to play a particular character through a couple of encounters because that's going to help with preventing you from getting attached to it. But that also means that you're less invested in the success of that character. And you have to be motivated by the success of the overworld, which is a much harder thing to sell. I find it an interesting concept, and I struggle to turn it into something that would be meaningful multiplayer unless if you are fine with not just the combat being turn-based, but also the political machinations functionally being turn-based. If you're fine with turning that into, rather than trying to do these long things, if you're just people talking at the speed of people talking, I could see that being a thing that you could adapt 5e to. That is a hard genre.
I want to push back, actually. So what Tali's describing to me, I feel like we actually might be able to turn into a DM-less system. But I think we're going to have to add a lot of rules. Essentially, D&D 5e is going to be the base of the combat system, and that's what we're going to run. And maybe even the classes in combat, it's going to be, right, we're going to let D&D dictate it. I think we have to add a whole layer of scaffolding around the politics. And that feels exciting to me, but I feel like we need to do a lot of work here. Like one of the things is, what is the opportunity cost? So sure, we want the Eldritch Knight, and I as a character own the Wizzy Noble House, and you as a character own Fighter the Fighter Wizard class. No, the Fighter Noble House. If we agree that we're going to, marry our houses, what opportunity cost? What are we losing in the politics? What opportunity are we potentially then going to fail at later because we chose to make that choice? I also think there could be, and I think it would have to be, there's a lot of fantastic cooperative games out there. What I'm actually thinking about right now is kind of the Forbidden series, where like I've got this map, something bad is happening on the map. When it's my turn, I have special actions as the folks who own, or as the character representing, the player representing the Wizard Noble House. And those special actions maybe let me stave off the darkness a little bit more. And now when it's your turn, you're going to have to do the same. And we're all fighting for the same thing, but we each have something different to contribute. And I think you might be able to wrap those opportunity costs into this. Maybe what's most exciting to me is the idea that, like, with some random draw on where the monsters show up and what level, like, is this going to be a medium fight for our current status or a hard fight for our current status? If you could come up with a way of randomizing that, you really could have a cool cooperative game with D&D combat that nobody has to sit out and be a DM, that everybody kind of gets to participate as an equal participant.
I like a lot of those ideas. Yeah, I think those are all really great points. Yeah, I think the meta political system would definitely be a huge thing, and like there would have to be mechanics and rules around that. And I'm sure we could probably steal those from one of any number of cool RPGs about more political things.
Well, I'll even say, like, going back to the source material, like, what is the actual opportunity cost of making that choice to mix houses? Can you not then mix it with some other house?
If I remember correctly, like basically one of the house's classes is forever changed. So like your wizard and your fighter class marry, one of the houses becomes the Eldritch Fighter or the Eldritch Knight class instead of fighter class. So like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe down the line, like they intermarry with the wizard class again. They get a little closer to wizard and a little further from fighter. So like basically your class availability changes over time. So you can't be like, okay, I now have the perfect composition of classes, because next time the bad guys show up, it's like, we're in this awkward period where we've got 4 rogue houses by accident.
That's actually kind of interesting. Let's say that you do not let the houses stand pat for more than like a generation or two. I know you think of the implication of that, but let's move on. That you always have to be taking these kinds of actions, which means you almost have to have a graph of like, okay, well, if we go down this path, we're eliminating a ton of opportunity. That might manage that problem by itself. And then you didn't go into the detail of what the other political issues are, but I think this is a good place in my mind where like I kind of want to go play that game to see what's up, and then what rules can we actually drag out of it to bring into our system.
I will say I would play that there. I mean, like you've both said, there would need to be a lot of work to make the political intrigue stuff both a worthwhile part of the game and also have some sort of cost, so that it's not just, yes, I always marry you. And with having not played the game, I don't know, is there perhaps some chance of failure if you try and marry one house to another and the scions decide, nah, dog, and just run away or something?
No, better, instead of getting an Eldritch Knight, you get like a hobbit that's not very good with long swords.
There is some sense of that in the game. Like it has some of those rogue style elements where it's like the stats are somewhat randomly generated. So you might end up with like, this couple had 4 children. 3 of them died in childbirth or died as children, and the 4th has garbage stats. What do I do now? Or if I remember correctly, I had a couple things happen where like the nobility would marry, and then like 10 years down the line, they're like, oh geez, one of us is barren. So like our noble house is just dead now. So you literally re-roll the house's stats and you get new nobles from somewhere.
No.
Yeah. So yeah.
What's the quote from Monty Python? It's like,
pick one.
Aquatic women handing out swords is no way to establish the nobility or whatever. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but the right quote.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to ask the question. I think I had a good time talking about each of these adaptations. I think we should force ourselves to vote on our favorite version. I'm going to go first to set the mood. I want to play Random's game. I'm super excited about that. Writing that game would be a ton of fun. participating in that game would be a ton of fun. Tyler, I really love your idea too. Full stop, really love your idea too. If what I'm coming for is like, I'm jonesing for D&D, I feel like I could play the most D&D with randoms D&D and get a really cool story to boot.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think I'd play randoms the most too. The puzzle aspect there just intrigues me. That seems so much fun.
Yeah, when we're done, you should go watch that tomorrow. Start there.
Yes. It is notoriously hard to find on streaming services for free. They just don't really rotate it in. But hey, wander down here and I'll lend you a Blu-ray.
All right.
Do you have a Blu-ray player?
My computer has a Blu-ray disc reader in it because I built it back when physical discs were still important.
Yeah, I think I'm running out of that.
Yeah.
All right, random. You have to pick one of the three.
Boy, I mean, honestly, I want to write mine. As soon as I came up with this idea, I started getting the bones for how would I do this? I had the opening scene, the plot hook to describe to players just pop into my head, not quite fully formed, but definitely like, okay, here's how I can take this. That by itself would involve porting a 3.0 monster into 5th edition, not 3.5, 3.0, which is already rough.
Wow. That's what the monsterizer is for.
There you go.
Perfect. All right. We have a question of the week this week. The question of the week this week comes to us from Twitter at WilkieDS. Is following the rules becoming the uncool way to play D&D?
Rules were meant to be broken, Wilkie. This is kind of just a natural shift in the tabletop RPG landscape. Like the RPGs used to be way, way crunchier than they are now. And over time, things have moved towards more story-driven rules-like games. Like if you go back an edition of D&D, it's way crunchier than 5th edition. Before that, it's way crunchier than 4th edition. Before that, I don't know if you could call it crunchier so much as just lookup tables. Story-driven rules-light games are very popular right now. And in a lot of cases, people are getting very okay with just rule of cool in D&D. I wouldn't say that completely ignoring the rules is becoming more popular, but people are getting more comfortable deviating from the rules, especially as we see like examples in actual plays and live streams and stuff of people playing D&D and saying, hey, like you want to jump over the pit, we'll make an ability check or something, even though that's not strictly written into the rules.
Just personally, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that there's really only two rules, which is apply things consistently and make sure everyone at the table is having fun. And even applying things consistently, that can bend. The only real rule zero, is what the DM says goes. And as long as everyone's having fun while that's happening, then you're good. You really want to make sure that you are playing enough with the same consistency so that people can have an expectation to be grounded on. If you say, I'm going to run a totally boundary-free, no rails game, and someone says, great, I built my character like this, and you say, that's fabulous, and you're going to use it twice, and then I'm going to decide that intimidation no longer works that way. Get bent. I feel like as long as everyone is coming together cooperatively rather than the us versus DM mentality that used to be a lot more prevalent in previous editions, the rules are there to be guidelines. Thanks, Pirates of the Caribbean.
I want to really approach this from the social aspect of it, right? So if you were a DM and you were trying to get your table to play by a particular rule, you're being a stickler for particular rules, and the feedback you're getting from your table is, this sucks and I hate it and I hate you and why are you doing this to me? I think that's good feedback. I think it's a strong signal that we need to back off and we need to figure out what it is that the players don't love. And so if that makes you feel as a DM like following the rules is uncool, that sucks. And part of it might be finding players who relish in the level of detail that are available to us in the rules at the same level that you do. Vice versa, if you're a player and you're sitting at a table and you constantly find yourself being the actually player at the table, and the DM is like, I'm going to allow it. I think that might be something to take one-on-one with the DM. Like, hey, did you know there's something to adjudicate these rules? This is something we share with people. I think if you spoon feed people a little bit more complexity a bit at a time, folks will tend to take the rules as you offer them and integrate it into their way of thinking. That's a thing that leads to people learning more about the game and potentially enjoying the game more, because there's a lot of fruit to be bore by following this. Vice versa, if it's constantly like, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, it doesn't work that way, I think that's really disappointing for the table. And I think that's a great place to follow the DM's lead. If the DM is occasionally just saying, you know what, I'm going to allow it. I don't think following the rules is becoming uncool, but I think if you're the only person at the table rules lawyering, you may be misreading the room.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
All right. And with that, so again, thank you for that question. I had a good time with it. I think everybody else did too. I'm Randall James. You can find me at amateurjack.com and on Twitter and Instagram at jackamateur.
I'm Tyler Kamstra. You'll find me at RPGBOT.net, Facebook and Twitter at RPGBOT.net, and patreon.com/RPGBot.
And I'm Randon Powell. You'll probably find me writing this story for the next long period of time. But if I'm taking some downtime, you may find me where people play games or as Harlequin or Harlequint. Otherwise, you'll find me here on the website contributing to the podcast and writing articles.
Oh, all right. All hail the Leisure Illuminati. Hail.
Hail? Hail?
Hail! You'll find affiliate links for source books and other materials linked in the show notes. Following these links helps us to make this show happen every week. In particular, you're going to find a link to Edge of Tomorrow. If you haven't seen it, go find it, or click the link and watch it there. It'll be great. You can find our podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold. If you enjoy this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with your friends. If your question should be the question of the week next week, please email podcast@rpgbot.net or message us on Twitter at RPGBOT.Podcast. Thanks, folks. We hope you had a good time.
The first chunk of that is definitely us just bullshitting.
I could see that. Yeah.